All right, folks, just as a reminder, we introduced the Enneagram on August 4th. Last week we talked about the gut triad. This week we're moving up to the heart with the heart triad, which are types 2, 3, and 4. And then next week at Burmill Park, we will finish our time with the Enneagram with the head triad, which is types 5, 6, and 7. I want to share with you all again this quote from Richard Rohr we brought up last week. He said, "We thought we came to God by doing it right, but lo and behold, we come to God by doing it wrong and then growing." That's a great quote that's about the heart of the Enneagram. Again, I want to reiterate what we said last week. The Enneagram is not about labeling or limiting. The Enneagram is about knowing ourselves, how we operate, the gifts and the stumbling blocks that we come to in this life, and how we can be more neighborly towards one another, and as best as we can, not add to the woundedness of the world. So if this is your first time, just a reminder that number ones are the perfectionists, number 2 are the helpers, number 3, the performers, number 4's the romantics, number 5, the investigators, 6's are the loyalists, 7's the enthusiasts, 8's are the challengers, and then the peacemakers are the 9's. This week we are going to be exploring the heart or the feeling triad. This is on page 27 of the Road Back to You that we're using as our primary roadmap. These types are driven by feelings, or as Elizabeth Orr puts it, they're the Care Bears of the Enneagram. Anybody remember the Care Bears? Just me. Twos, or the helpers, they tend to focus outwardly on the feelings of others, whereas 3s tend to have trouble recognizing their own feelings or other people's feelings. And then 4s, while 2s focus outwardly on the feelings of others, 4s tend to concentrate inwardly on their own feelings. So 2s, 3s, and 4s take in and relate to life from their hearts and are much more, for better or for worse, image conscious than the other types. So we'll start off with number 2. When you all did this poll a few weeks ago as to which Enneagram types you all thought that you were, 2s was the highest, was the most popular in this room. Now, 2s are the helpers. We are all Christians. Jesus said we should help one another. So just because we like to help people, which hopefully we all do, does not necessarily mean that we are a 2. But it has to do with motivations. And Elizabeth Orr calls 2s self-sacrifice with some serious strings attached. Qualities of typical 2s: they are very caring and interpersonal. They seek to support others, and both to their health and to their detriment can derive their own self-worth from helping. So at their best, when 2s are at their healthiest, they are generous in their efforts to love well and to care for others. At their healthiest, 2s can have very healthy boundaries, and they know what is theirs to do and what is theirs not to do. On average, Enneagram 2s are generous people, but often consciously or subconsciously expect something in return for their efforts. And at their worst, when 2s are having a really bad day, like we all do, 2s can be codependent, insecure, and manipulative. I know, y'all, the Enneagram is one of those things where if you're going through the different types and something goes, oh, that hurts, you might be onto something. And as always, I want to reiterate, with every type of the Enneagram, each type's gifts are also their stumbling blocks, and vice versa. Okay, so just pay attention to that as we go about. The gifts of type 2s, why the Church of Jesus Christ and the world needs type 2s, they are very interpersonal. I do not know a type 2 who cannot immediately make a connection with somebody, who cannot immediately walk into a room and kind of have a really good sense of what people need. And that's a really great gift. And because of that, they're indiscriminate caregivers. They have a natural gift of making people feel safe and included. We need so much of that these days. And they have a real heart for service and discipleship. Often Martha in the Gospels is referred to as a 2, which may or may not be fair, but they're people that just are always doing, always serving, always helping. Now, their gifts can also be their stumbling blocks, as I said. 2s often subconsciously live in a tit-for-tat world, not realizing that they're keeping tabs on good deeds for when they need to withdraw from the bank. I wish to highlight the word subconsciously, because if you ask a 2 if they're running tabs, they will say, quite honestly, no, of course not. I do this because I want to help. And so I want to emphasize that 2s may not even be aware that they're doing this. And like other members of the heart triad, 2s, 3s, and 4s, 2s have poignant identity crises because they often base their identity off of the emotions of others around them. And if they're not careful, type 2s can have really poor boundaries. And they can give until they crash and burn, and then it becomes everyone else's problem. So that's one of their stumbling blocks. So if you're a 2, then you're either a 2 with a 1 wing or a 2 with a 3 wing. If you lean a little bit more towards your neighbor, the 1, you're probably more concerned about doing things properly. You might be a little bit more critical of yourself and have clearer boundaries than 2 with a 3 wing. If you're a 2 with a 3 wing, you're probably a little bit more image conscious and competitive than a 2 wing 1, and can kind of shape shift like the chameleons that are type 3s, which we're going to get to in just a minute. 2s, when they are stressed out and they need a Snickers bar and are not doing well, they can have the tendency of 8s, the challengers, and can become very demanding, controlling, and even manipulative. But when 2s are having a really good day, when they are taking care of themselves and have healthy boundaries, they can integrate the positive attributes of 4s and can know that it's okay if they don't love everybody and have a better sense of self-care and inward focus. So if you are a 2, or you know a 2, then it's very helpful to know the opportunities for spiritual growth. If you are a 2, the healing message you might need to hear is you're wanted and your needs matter too. You give so much. It's okay to take. Learn the difference between self-interested and altruistic giving. Maybe God simply wants 2s. I think Ian Crone says this in the book. Maybe God simply wants 2s and all of us simply to relax in his presence. This is where he does use the example of Mary and Martha. We don't always have to be doing. 2s sometimes need to remember that we're just called to be. And this is going to be a whammy for any Enneagram 2 here with us today. In their time with God, 2s need to ask themselves, who am I when no one needs me? If that sentence hurts you, you might be a 2. It's great to be needed, but it's also important that 2s know that their value is not tied to them being needed. That even in any given moment when someone doesn't need them, they still have intrinsic value and are beloved children of God. So as I'm doing with each of the types, I'm giving them like a snarky health song and a snarky stress song. So my health song for Enneagram 2s is Lean on Me by Bill Withers. So everybody sing it. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. All right, so that's what 2s do when they are at their best. Lean on me. Let's work together. What can I do to help? Now, when 2s are having a really bad day, my snarky stress song is a song that some people may not know by Alison Krauss called Baby, Now That I've Found You. It's an absolutely lovely, beautiful, bittersweet song about somebody who has built their life around somebody else, and then that person no longer needs them, and they're having their identity crisis. That's kind of 2s when they're having a rough day. Now, I'm also choosing a Bible character for each of the types, and I chose Jonathan. A lot of people, we sometimes forget about Jonathan. Jonathan was the son of King Saul and a very, very dear friend to David. Helped David out when Saul was having a really rough day and was trying to kill David multiple times. Jonathan was often the person that stepped in and said, hey, my dad's having a really cranky day. You may want to, leave town for a couple days or years. So that is Jonathan. And David and Jonathan had a very close relationship. So that was kind of what came to my mind when I was coming up with the Bible character for Enneagram 2s. All right, moving right along to 3s. 3s are the performers, or as Elizabeth All calls them, a hall of mirrors and a house of cards. Typical 3s are very adaptable and success-oriented, driven by goals, and focus on image and efficiency. If you're a 3 and you are the performer, as they're called, at their best, 3s set goals, they rise to challenges and solve problems and have a pretty good balance between being and doing. On their average, 3s can be the overachievers of the Enneagram, can be highly driven and often see love as something that must be earned at all costs. And at their worst, when 3s are having a bad day, they can be desperate for attention, validation, and find failure simply unacceptable. I put a picture of a chameleon up there because 3s are the chameleons of the Enneagram. If you know somebody who, when they walk into a room, know exactly what they need to say and do in order to gain everyone's trust or validation, that person might be a 3. They are often incredibly resilient and inspirational. 3s can make really great leaders. As I said, because they're the chameleons of the Enneagram, their flexibility in any given situation might be their greatest asset. And as I already mentioned, they can be really fearless leaders. But as I said, gifts are stumbling blocks. Stumbling blocks are gifts. Their stumbling blocks are that they are often so very obsessed with image that their own sense of self gets lost in the endless performance. They care so much about how others perceive them and will kind of shape shift into whatever they feel they need to do to get ahead or to get a project done that they forget about what they want or who they see themselves to be. Like 6s and 9s, they can be kind of out of touch with their emotions if they're not careful. And the biggest stumbling block, I think, of type 3s is they can get into a place where they see the world as a zero-sum game, right? In order for one person to win, another person has to what? Has to lose. And for those of us that try imperfectly to follow the gospel of Jesus Christ, we do not live in a zero-sum world. If you're a 3-wing 2, then most of them are charming and intimate and make great entertainers, politicians, salespeople, or pastors. 3-wing 4s are a little bit more introverted, a little bit more introspective and in touch with their feelings. If you're a 3, then in times of stress, you can go to the unhealthy side of a 9 and kind of lose your sense of optimism and confidence and become insecure. But when you're healthy and you're a 3, then you can integrate the positive attributes of 6s and become less competitive, less defensive, and kind of give up on that need to be the star or in control. If you are a 3, your opportunities for spiritual growth are this. Ian Crone and Susan Stabile say that being a 3 and living in America is like being an alcoholic living above a saloon. Because 3s love the endless consumerist rat race. So Ian Crone says that the spiritual opportunities for spiritual growth for a type 3 is to learn to let go of the constant need to perform, let go of having to be someone else for everyone else. Learn to rest, learn to let go of work, give up the rat race, and finally, challenge your definition of success, which means focus less on inherited I think the word I'm looking there was expectations. Thank you, not acceptance. Expectations of family or culture, and focus a little bit more on your own feelings, your own desires, and your own values. My take on 3s, their health song is Unstoppable by Sia. Never get in the way of a 3 when they are ready to get a project done. Their stress song is Rockstar by the greatest band in the history of the world, Nickelback. Hope y'all detected that sarcasm there. And as far as a Bible character, you could make a case for a lot of different folks. I chose Esther. Esther is one of my favorite characters in the Old Testament. In fact, I'm wearing my Esther stole today for such a time as this. Esther was a very gifted person. You could even call her a politician in the best sense of the word, that really kind of chose her identity or wouldn't say choose her identity, but revealed her identity in very strategic ways in order to save her people from violence against her absolute buffoon of a husband, King Ahasuerus, right? So I think Esther is a really good example of a healthy 3. And finally, we have type 4s, the romantic. Or as I like to call type 4s, the tortured poets department of the sacred Enneagram. Elizabeth Orr calls 4s feeling misunderstood, and I'm going to make it your problem. So at their best, 4s have a deep emotional well from which to draw to connect with others and be particularly attuned to beauty. At their average, type 4s struggle with self-acceptance and often exaggerate their uniqueness. They can be moody and melodramatic and self-pitying. And at their worst, when they're having a bad day, 4s can be manipulative and feel so much shame that they are unable to connect with others. They're very sensitive and introspective. They seek identity and significance and often feel different from others. Now, here are the gifts of type 4s. Type 4s are known to be boundlessly creative and very comfortable with holding contradicting ideas, mystery, beauty. Type 4s are very artistic and can have a really abundant and weird sense of humor because of their weird take on the world, as Ian Crone puts it. And 4s are really good about connecting with people emotionally in difficult times. Ian Crone, who is a 4 himself, who wrote the book, The Road Back to You, says that if you are in a place of particular pain, agony, and suffering, and you need somebody to sit with you and not try to fix you, go find a 4, because that's the gift of type 4s. But now, of course, we have to roast type 4s. And I, your pastor, am a type 4. So I'm going to roast 4s the worst, because if you're a 4 out there, you are my people. So know that I say this in love. This is the stumbling block for us 4s. 4s don't have feelings. 4s think that they are their feelings. And that's a really tricky place to be. Because if you're always identifying as your emotions, are emotions always the same, or are they always changing? They're always changing, right? So if you identify as your emotions, you kind of see why you would be in a constant identity crisis, right? 4s often feel like there's something missing from themselves that everybody else has. That's why 4s struggle with envy. We don't know what that is that we're missing. We just know that we're missing, and all of y'all have it and we don't, because we're so unique. A little bit sarcastic there. If we're not careful, Enneagram 4's emotional intensity can drive other people away and then become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing the narrative that they are inherently different or other or misunderstood. If you're a 4 wing 3, then you both want to have the uniqueness of the 4 and the drive to be the best of a 3. So you can be a little bit more image conscious than 4 wing 5s. If you're a 4 wing 5, you're probably a little bit more introverted and a little bit more unconventional and don't care as much about image. If you're a 4 and you're having a rough day and are stressed out, you can take on the unhealthy qualities of 2s, which we talked about a few minutes ago, and repress your own needs and need tons of reassurance and affirmation. But when 4s are taking care of themselves and are in a place of health, they can be more focused on the present, centered and calm, and they know that they can have feelings without talking about them or acting on them. Now, if you are a 4 like me, these are your opportunities for spiritual growth. Practice the spiritual discipline of equanimity. Everybody say that word, equanimity. Do y'all know what that means? I really had not heard it much before I read this book. Equanimity is the ability, the practice of having an emotion and have it pass through you kind of like a wave and then move on with your life. Fours are notoriously bad about that. We choose an emotion and we think, oh, this is an ocean that I'm going to get drowned in. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stew on this emotion for 4 or 5 days. Trisha loves it when I do this, don't you? Equanimity is understanding that no emotion is final and that all emotions are gifts, but they don't have to define us. Fours need to find healthy ways to let go of envy and comparison. Fours also need to explore and trust the truth that you're not fundamentally broken. Trust the truth that God isn't so cruel as to send you or anyone else to this life fundamentally broken or beyond redemption and love. Introspection and emotional awareness can be a great gift as long as it doesn't lead to self-absorption. And then finally, repeat after me, not everything is a metaphor. Not everything is a metaphor. I think it was Sigmund Freud that once said, sometimes a cigar is what? Just a cigar, right? So my take on fours, their health song is What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. At their healthiest, us fours are really able to find beauty in almost anything. Even in terribly heartbreaking, broken circumstances, fours can find beauty and meaning and connection. So when we're doing well, that's our health song. Since I'm a four, I could not select just one snarky stress song, so I chose 3. I still haven't found what I'm looking for by U2. As I said, fours think that they're missing something that everybody else has, so we've got to go find it, even though we don't know what it is. Creep by the band Radiohead, because fours sometimes feel that they're just different. And then finally, a song that y'all may or may not know by The Police called King of Pain. Anybody know that song? A song by The Police where Sting just makes a really beautiful but dark metaphor over everything he sees. And that's what Enneagram 4s do. And the Bible character, I had to jump on the bandwagon here because everybody who studies the Bible and Enneagram says the same thing. King David was an Enneagram 4, at least that's my guess. And my evidence is the entirety of the book of Psalms. If you want to know the depths of agony and lament and despair, they're in the book of Psalms. If you want to look at the height of joy and praise and thanksgiving and gratitude, look at the book of Psalms. So that is my take on fours. All right, y'all. We only have one triad left. Next week, we will go through the head triad with types 5, 6, and 7. Let's keep the conversation going. Feel free to reach out to me throughout the week if you have any curiosities or anything that you are exploring in your own Enneagram journey.